It's time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, the award-winning broadcast covering fishing, hunting, and outdoor recreation throughout the Great Northwest. Northwestern Outdoors is brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, producing a legacy of innovation since 1969, by Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter, and by Loophole, America's optical authority. Also sponsoring the show every week is Shiloh Inn & Suites, offering affordable excellence throughout the West. Mardon Resort, the place to fish and hunt in eastern Washington, and the Wallowa County Chamber of Commerce, where nature is on display in Northeast Oregon all year long. And now, let's head into the field with your host, John Cruz.
Last week, we took you to several national parks and monuments around the Northwest, and this week, we're going to be taking you to what may be my new favorite national park of all time. It's Grand Teton National Park. If you enjoy hiking, trout fishing, wildlife watching, and absolutely gorgeous vistas and views without the maddening crowds of nearby Yellowstone Park, you will probably feel the same way after a visit to this magnificent destination in western Wyoming, just north of Jackson. Andrew White, who works in the Public Affairs Office at Grand Teton National Park, will give you an overview of this wonderful place, and then we're going to lace up our hiking boots and hit the trail to Taggart Lake with National Park Service Ranger Lucy Kraft. She's not only going to tell you about this easy hike to a gorgeous mountain lake, but also tell you about several other family-friendly hikes you can enjoy in the park as well. One of those hikes is to Hidden Falls, and getting there is half the fun. You see, you first board a boat which takes you across Jenny Lake in the park, and then you hike to the very picturesque waterfall. Along the way, you just may see deer or even a bear like we did. Park Ranger Andrew Langford will tell you more about this hike, fishing at Jenny Lake, and about other things you can do around Jenny Lake in this popular park destination. After that, we'll let you know about the rafting trips you can take down the Snake River and about some of the places you can stay at while visiting here. Places that range from campsites to RV sites to cabins and lodges, including the luxurious Jackson Lake Lodge, which has views of the lake and the Grand Tetons. You just have to see whether you're a guest or not. Throw in an extended Max Minute with Lance Mers, who has something hot for you anglers to try, and our Sportsman Spotlight Trivia Question of the Week, where you have a chance every week to win a $25 gift card from Sportsman's Warehouse. And I think you'll agree, we've got one heck of a show coming your way. But first, have you ever heard of Pete's Reels? You're about to hear about these historic saltwater fishing reels, courtesy of David Sparks on this week's Sportsman Spotlight. Sportsman Spotlight is sponsored by Nate Luther's Guide Service. Now is the time to book your September salmon or steelhead fishing trip on the Snake River, and Nate is the guide to book with if you want to take some fish home and have fun doing it. Find out more about that at NateLuthersGuideservice.com.
Art Aylesworth owns Pete's Fishing Reels up in Canada, and he's going to tell you all about them today on Sportsman Spotlight. This is David Sparks.
A Russian immigrant named Boris Peets came to Vancouver Island to try and capitalize on the gold rush that was going on here. Well, he got here just towards the end of it. He's a jeweler, but he gets involved in the local fishing community. And at that time, people used to wrap cutty hunk around pieces of board. So there wasn't actually a reel that was suitable for salmon and halibut back in the early 1900s. And he took a smaller Nottingham reel out of Europe that was used for smaller fish and took that as a baseline and started to work on ideas so he could fish in the deep waters, sometimes 200 and 300 feet deep. Boris Peets was a jeweler, and as a result, he was a real fine craftsman and tool and die maker and jig maker, and he was a clever guy. So he started to make fishing reels, and lots of trial and error, but eventually became the standard reel here for decades. Everybody that fished here fished on Peets reels, whether it was for salmon or halibut or ground fish.
Vancouver Island.
And all the way from Alaska down to Oregon, actually, the whole coast, but sure, predominantly British Columbia for sure.
And as I look at the reels, they almost look like jewelry, kind of like a watch.
They're all handcrafted, artisan type work, and they're still made today in the same craftsmanship and the same approach. If you're on our website right now, you go look at the 5-inch Evolution reel. It's a one-way drag, single action, beautiful drag control, beautiful functionality. The hand-carved series is exactly that reel, but instead of having a laser engraved fish and our logo on the face, it's all been hand-carved by a member of the legendary Hunt family of native carvers.
PEETZ Outdoors.com. They are pricey but spectacular. Check them out.
Have you fished with Nate Luther before? He's the guide who's always catching fish out of his big boat painted in Seattle Seahawks blue and green. Nate grew up around Lewiston, Idaho. He has been fishing the Snake River and the Clearwater for as long as he can remember, and he wants to take you out on a trip where you can catch Chinook salmon to 25 pounds or steelhead up to 20 pounds. Here's how you do it. Go to his website, NateLuthersGuideservice.com. That's NateLuthersGuideservice.com, or give him a call at 208-503-9204. That's 208-503-9204 for an awesome Chinook salmon and steelhead catching adventure.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
Leupold Gold Ring Optics are built to perform at the highest level, shot after shot, year after year. Our rifle scopes, binoculars, spotting scopes, rangefinders, and more always come through when you need them most. That's why our American-built products have a lifetime guarantee. Or as we like to say here at Leupold, they are guaranteed for a lifetime of performance, not a lifetime of replacement. Find out more about our top-quality gear and our lifetime guarantee at Leupold.com. Leupold, America's optics authority.
Back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We are broadcasting from Grand Teton National Park. It's south of Yellowstone National Park. It's in Wyoming near the Idaho border, and I'll tell you what, I think this is probably my new favorite national park, especially when it comes to scenic beauty. With us here to tell us more about it, Andrew White, who works for the Public Affairs Office at Grand Teton National Park. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
Andrew, talk about a drop-dead view we have from your office space here. I'm looking at the Grand Tetons. Absolutely magnificent mountain range.
Yeah, the Teton Range is quite magnificent. The park, of course, Grand Teton was named for the tallest of the Teton Range, the Grand Teton at 13,770 feet, but really an iconic range. And what really makes it special is it's contrasted with the pancake flat valley of Jackson Hole. So a lot of visitors might be coming over Togety Pass, coming up from Jackson, this big open sagebrush flat, and then boom, you see the Teton Mountain Range rising about 7,000 feet above that valley floor. So it's very neat.
Yellowstone National Park up to the north has the honor of being the first national park, and it certainly is a more visited national park than here too. So I guess if you want to avoid some of the crowds but get in some of the same experiences, this would be a great place to go. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about the history of the park, how big it is, and a few things like that. Just a brief overview, if you will.
Yeah, John, sure. So the Grand Teton is actually a much younger park than Yellowstone, our friends to the north. While they were established in 1872, it wasn't until 1929 that Congress saw fit to establish the Grand Teton National Park. And even that park really only encompassed the Teton Range. It wasn't until 1943 when President Roosevelt established the Jackson Hole National Monument that the Jackson Hole Valley was actually protected, and then Congress in 1950 combined the two into the national park we know today. It is slightly less visited than Yellowstone, although we're seeing more and more visitation in the last few years. Last year, we set a record with over 2.7 million visitors. And this current year, we're seeing an uptick even from that, maybe 5 to 10% more visitors than that previous year. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of folks coming. We're a much smaller park than Yellowstone, only about 310,000 acres. So pretty compact. It's possible to see it in a day. I don't recommend it. I recommend a few days to really enjoy your time here.
Well, you've got certain pieces of the park that I think people need to experience. Number one, of course, is the Teton Mountain Range, which basically towers over everything. But you've got a lot of hiking available in the woods and in the mountains and around the lakes. And the lakes are a big part of this park and a big part of the recreational activities here.
Yeah, absolutely, John. We call them Piedmont lakes, which means they're lakes at the foot of the mountain. Not to get too far into the science here, but the glaciers that really carved the Teton Range and made them so jagged, they left behind all these lakes right at the foot of the mountains, which really creates a great foreground with the magnificent backdrop of the Teton Range, whether it's Jackson Lake, Jenny Lake, Lee Lake, String Lake, Phelps Lake. I can go on and on with all the gorgeous lake, and most of them have trails around them. Most can be paddled by stand-up paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, even even a few of them, we allow motorized boating on them. So yeah, the lakes can be an outstanding way to enjoy the park. Great to hike around them, great to swim in them, great to paddle on them.
Let's talk about some of the other recreational activities here. Hiking is a big one. We're going to dive into that in detail later in the show. Wildlife watching is also really big here, and we're also diving into that further in the show. But suffice it to say, just in the single day that I've been here today, it's been incredible. I have seen black bear, I have seen moose, I've seen a couple of badgers, which to me was a real treat. I've seen deer and, of course, marmots and smaller animals too, and that doesn't even include the birds. You've got eagles, you've got osprey, you've got hawks. You've just got a huge heaping plate of wildlife watching opportunities, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, John. You hit the nail on the head with kind of the diversity of wildlife that we have in Grand Teton. A lot of the people that come out here are really surprised by how readily available the wildlife are. People often see moose for the first time in their lives when they come to Grand Teton. That's because we have a number of wetlands and lakes, like I was talking about a little earlier. Whether it's the large megafauna that you were speaking of, the black bears, grizzly bears, moose, elk, those are some of the big attractions, but even some of the smaller creatures like the pika, which can be seen in the backcountry in the Teton Range, can really be a highlight for visitors on their trip to the Tetons.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. We're talking to Andrew White, and we're broadcasting from the place he works at, Grand Teton National Park. Andrew, a couple of things I want to talk about in terms of recreational activities. You've got this paved bike trail that runs from Jenny Lake all the way to Jackson. I had no idea this existed, and it looks like it's really popular as well. Tell our listeners more about it.
Yeah, starting in about 2008, we installed a shared or multi-use pathway in the park. So it's available for bike riding, walking, jogging, rollerblading. Closed to dogs, however, so not quite every activity is allowed on. But we share the use on that pathway, like you mentioned. It goes down to the town of Jackson, so folks that are staying in Jackson can ride the pathway all the way up to Jenny Lake, which is about a 20-mile ride. So very cool. It's mostly in the sagebrush flats, so it's not like you're biking in the Tetons and you're getting 7,000 feet of elevation gain. It's relatively flat, only a few hundred feet of elevation gain from the town of Jackson to Jenny Lake. But yeah, it's been very popular since they were constructed in 2008 and then later in 2012 to complete the path. But yeah, you see a lot of families, a lot of, almost professional riders on that pathway, and it's been really neat to see.
Something else I want to talk about here just briefly. I know that, this isn't your forte per se, but there's some good fishing in some of the lakes here. Now, we talked to Andrew Langford about fishing Jenny Lake for species like lake trout and cutthroat trout and even brook trout. Are there other fishing opportunities here in the park as well?
Yeah, in addition to the lakes, the Snake River is world-renowned for its fly fishing and regular fishing. It's the home of the Snake River cutthroat trout, which is a species that is endemic to the area and is really a prized game fish for people to come out, especially the fly fishermen. So the Snake River, and actually August 1st, a number of the tributaries of the Snake River open up to fishing as well. So there's some great fly fishing, particularly for the trout in this area.
Something else when you're talking about the Snake River, which runs through a good portion of this park, that we need to mention is the scenic rafting trips. Now, we're going to be going on one of those and talking about it later in the show, but it looks like this is a really popular activity for folks visiting the park, too.
Yeah, a lot of people that come to Grand Teton National Park go on a scenic float trip down the Snake River. We always set the expectation it's a scenic float trip. It's not a whitewater trip. You can find those further on downstream on the Snake River. But it's a very relaxing trip. The guides are very knowledgeable. They can tell you all about the wildlife species you're seeing, the history of the park. A lot of what I'm telling you now, they know the park very intimately. It's a great way to see wildlife, especially if you do the breakfast or dinner floats down the Snake River. It's a great way to see the Teton Range really from the lowest point in the park.
One other thing to talk about is getting here. Now, this park's primarily open during the summer months just because there's so much snow around here, and you can get here from Idaho Falls like we did on Highway 26. You can get here from Yellowstone National Park, but you can also fly in. I've never seen this before, a commercial airport located in a national park.
Yeah, John, you haven't seen it before because it's the only national park that has a commercial airport within its boundaries. It's the Jackson Hole Airport, and it's the only commercial airport, like I said, in a national park. So we're working a lot with the folks at the FAA and the Jackson Hole Airport just to make sure that the wildlife aren't overly impacted by the overflights and the visitor experience as well. But it provides very easy access from 13 cities, I believe.
incredible. We are starting to run out of time, but before we go, we better steer people towards a website and maybe a Facebook page too to learn more about Grand Teton National Park and hopefully pay a visit this summer, or if not this summer, the next summer, because I know that accommodations you have in terms of the lodges and the campgrounds and the RV sites, those fill up fast, and reserving a year in advance is not a bad idea.
Absolutely, John. Preparing in advance is the best way to ensure that you're going to have a great trip to Grand Teton National Park. Our website is www.nps.gov/GRTE. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So if you want to see some great photos of us, get the latest scoop, we're always at Grand Teton NPS. That's our handle. So yeah, plan using the social media, using the website, or you can always give us a call at 307-739-3399.
That's Grand Teton National Park. I think if you visit it and take in the beauty and all the opportunities here like I have, you're going to agree with me. This is a can't-miss destination. Andrew, thanks for sharing it with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for having me, John. Great to be here.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
Today's line of portable camp stoves from Camp Chef have come a long way from your father's propane stove, featuring matchless ignition, more cooking power, and in some cases a built-in grill or extra burner. Look for the complete line of Mountain Series stoves at your local sporting goods store or online at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
We're back with John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company. This week, we've got Lance Mers with us again. And Lance, the salmon are swimming up the Columbia River. It's summer, so we've got sockeye, we've got coho, and the first Chinook are starting as well. What's something that you would recommend for all three species that would get fish in the boat?
John, you know what? Everybody fishes with like a traditional flasher or a cut plug herring or something to that effect. But I've changed things up. I'm using a Max Lure Hot Wing on top of my Double D Dodger, and then going down to my leader with a herring rig or a cut plug herring or whatever.
So let's go ahead and talk about these Hot Wings. It's an ultra light attractor. Basically got two Mylar blades, kind of big smile blades, got some beads. Does it give off a lot of flash? Because it sure isn't a huge package.
A lot of flash, a lot of attraction, 90% less drag in the water. So the less drag you have in the water, the more sensitive that rod tip's going to be. You're going to feel everything.
You know, I've actually seen these fished in front of plugs before with success in the Columbia River as well. And if I was even a trout angler, you know, trolling a wedding ring spinner up at like Concanoli Lake or, you know, somewhere else, these would be great to go ahead and use too. I can see this being used for quite a few different species. And folks, it's small enough to fit right in your tackle box.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's the diversity of this. It's fantastic.
All right. So it's the Hot Wings. It's your ultralight attractor. Use it for salmon. Use it for trout. Use it for whatever you want and get more fish in the boat. That wraps up another Max Minute. Find out more about this product and more at maxlure.com or at your local sporting goods dealer. Hey, we're talking to Lance Mers today with Max Lure Company about a brand new lure that's just slaying the trout out there on area lakes. It's the Smile Blade Spin Drift Trout Lure from Max Lure Company. Lance, what makes this lure so special?
Well, we've got our Max Lure patented Smile Blade, our high UV components, and the Spin Drift hook, which gives it a great corkscrew action in the water.
There you go, folks. All three components help you catch more fish. The Smile Blade Spin Drift Trout Lure, only from Max Lure Company.
The road is calling you to experience one of Oregon's 7 wonders, the Wallowas. So grab your family and spend some time exploring Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Visit the state park at the head of glacier-carved Wallowa Lake. Travel the Hells Canyon Scenic Byway. Feel the pioneer spirit, Nez Perce history, and see our Western arts and bronzes. Ascend to the top of Mount Howard on the tram and you'll see why Wallowa County is one of Oregon's most scenic and adventurous vacation wonders. This summer, take the road that leads to wonders. It begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
Have you fished with Nate Luther before? He's the guide who's always catching fish out of his big boat painted in Seattle Seahawks blue and green. Nate grew up around Lewiston, Idaho. He has been fishing the Snake River and the Clearwater for as long as he can remember, and he wants to take you out on a trip where you can catch Chinook salmon to 25 pounds or steelhead up to 20 pounds. Here's how you do it. Go to his website, NateLuthersGuideservice.com. That's NateLuthersGuideservice.com, or give him a call at 208-503-9204. That's 208-503-9204 for an awesome Chinook salmon and steelhead catching adventure. You're back with Northwestern Outdoors. I'm John Cruz. We are broadcasting from beautiful Grand Teton National Park. Just went on a great hike to Taggart Lake, and we're talking to the ranger who took me there, Lucy Kraft. Lucy, thanks for taking me on a great hike this morning.
Glad you enjoyed the hike. It turned out to be a big hike today.
Oh my gosh, there were a lot of people with us, but that didn't take away at all from the experience. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the hike to Taggart Lake? It's really an easy one to do.
Yeah, it's a 1.5 mile long hike with a minimum elevation gain, and fortunately when you do the ranger-led walk, we do all the elevation gain in one go. But it's a good one, especially for families with small children, because once you get to the end of the hike, you get to a lake, and then you can relax and take it easy and then come back at your own pace. So it's a great one. And if you come with a ranger, you can learn all about all sorts of different things. Today, you will learn about water.
Learned a whole lot about water and water conservation to boot. But let's talk about another lake that's just past Taggart Lake, Bradley Lake. Now, we didn't get to that one today, but is that just as easy to get to? It looks like it's just another half mile on.
It is a half mile on, but it's a lot of elevation gain afterwards. It is a high-end moderate hike from Taggart to Bradley, but it's still a great hike with a lot of chances for seeing black bears. We've actually had some reports for the last few days of hikers seeing black bears out on that trail. To remind everyone to keep 300 feet away from bears at all times and to respect the fact this is their home, not yours.
And that segues into something else, and that's the incredible variety of wildlife here at Grand Teton National Park. We were, with a group today, quite a large group actually, that was trundling up the trail, and despite that, we saw a moose cross the road right here at the parking lot before we even left. We saw not one but two badgers less than 75 yards away in a field. We saw a doe mule deer. We saw squirrels. We saw chipmunks. We saw cedar waxwings flitting around, and we even saw another moose at the end at the lake across the lake. I mean, that was an incredible experience. I couldn't believe it.
You forgot the marmot.
And I forgot the marmot on the rock. You're right.
We saw a lot of animals, and that's actually uncommon for this sort of hike. Like you said, we had 38 people in our group today, and to see that many animals was astounding and just awesome. I'm so glad the kids got to see them, and you actually were the one who spotted the badger, so good job. It's great to when the public helps the ranger out and goes, hey, look what's over there, because sometimes our backs are to it, and mine definitely was today.
Well, no worries about that. Lots of eyes looking today. What are some of the other species of wildlife besides the ones we just described and black bear that are out here? I'm guessing there's, we already talked about moose, but in terms of ungulates, do you have elk and pronghorn too?
We have elk and pronghorn for ungulates, the mule deers, which we talked about. Some of the other big animals include the grizzly bear and the bison. We have bison, commonly known as buffalo. My favorite, the Latin term for bison. And we have so many animals out here. We also have wolverines, the most dangerous animal in the park, which unlikely you're going to get to see, but wouldn't that be cool? We have mountain lions, again, rarely if ever seen, but here, a lot of the animals here, they exist, and you might see them and you might not. If you're a birder, we have the great gray owl that you regularly see on the Moose Wilson Road, and the American bald eagle, the golden eagle, osprey, lots of different types of birds of prey and songbirds. It's a great place to be. You might even get to see a western tanager.
Those are actually very pretty birds. So let's talk about one other thing. Your neighbor to the north, Yellowstone National Park, is well known for wolves. Do you get a chance to see wolves down here in Grand Teton as well?
We do. We have 7 packs of wolves here in Grand Teton. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that a motorist did kill a wolf this month, car accident. So if you do come out to the parks, mind your speed. The animals don't obey the roads, and they have the right of way.
Well, and we should also mention that moose that we saw at the parking lot, it was making its way across the road, and you don't want to hit a moose. That is not going to be a good ending for the moose or for your car or for your truck. Let's talk about the dominant feature here at Grand Teton National Park. It's these peaks here called the Tetons. You know, what are we looking at? The iconic one in the middle is snow-covered and juts up above all of them.
Well, you are looking at what the native tribes would call Tiwanaut, which means many pinnacles. And we have Tiwanaut to the north of us. Then we have Mount Owens, then the Grand, then the Middle Teton, and the South Teton. There are 3 Tetons. And if you know French, I really want to know why there's 3.
You're listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. We're broadcasting from Grand Teton National Park. We're talking to Interpretive Ranger Lucy Kraft, who's taken us on a great hike this morning. Let's talk about other family-friendly hikes that are available here in the park.
Well, we have a number of trails in the park for many different fitness levels, and that's one of the things you have to think about before you go on any of the hikes I recommend. There are flat hikes. There are hikes back into the mountains. Teton starts at 7,000 feet down here in the valley, and a lot of people are coming from a lot lower. When you're elevation, you're going to dehydrate faster, and you need to be aware that the sun is going to be more intense, so lots of sunscreen and water. But some of the other really good family-friendly hikes are any of the hikes around Jenny Lake to Hidden Falls, Inspiration Point, Cascade Canyon. To the north of Jenny Lake, there's String Lake, which is our shallowest lake, therefore our warmest. Great for swimming, boating, stand-up paddle boarding. You know, there's lots to be done. Lee Lake is north of that. It's good also for swimming. That one, the Lee Lake hike, has a minimum elevation gain. It's an out and back, absolutely gorgeous. Last time I did it, I saw a moose swim across the lake with its baby.
That is cool. So, where can people find out more about these hikes? And especially, well, let's actually take this in 2 parts. I want to talk about the ranger-led hikes in a second, some of the programs you have, but just about hiking in the park in general. Is the website the best place, or are there brochures at the visitor center?
You can get the brochures either on the website or at the visitor center, and you want to take a look at them. You want the day hike brochure and the lake trails brochure. And those 2 brochures together will give you the best overview of all the different lakes and all the different hikes, and they'll give you elevation gain, distance, and an estimation on time. So those are really the 2 key. Look at it ahead of time, come into the park, and with an idea of 1 or 2 hikes you want to do. Otherwise, us rangers are just going to tell you what we wish we were doing if we weren't stuck behind a desk today. So definitely have a couple ideas, and then come in and ask the ranger, hey, are these hikes open? Have there been any bear activity on these hikes? Is there anything I need to know? Has anything changed? Because out here in the middle of nowhere, things can change at the drop of a hat, and we can say, oh no, that trail is actually closed because there's a carcass on it and a mountain lions in the area. You want to know these things before you go down the trails.
Very good advice. Let's talk about one other facet of exploring Grand Teton National Park, and that's doing it with the ranger. You've got a number of programs and ranger-led hikes during the summer months. How can people find out about those, and what are some of the more popular ones?
Well, they're all pretty popular. They're all great. We have an amazing staff here of interp rangers. They know their stuff. When you come into the park, you'll get the Park Teton Guide, which is the park newspaper. It lists all of the ranger-led programs, be it hikes, sit-downs, conversations. You can even have coffee with a ranger. But for the ranger-led hikes, there's the up north in Coulter Bay, there's the Swan Lake and Heron Pond hike. At Jenny Lake, there is the Hidden Falls hike. Here in the Moose area, we do the Taggart Lake hike. And down south at the Lawrence Rockefeller Preserve, there is the Explore the Preserve hike. And those are all ranger-led. The only one you have to make reservations for is the Lawrence Rockefeller Explore the Preserve hike, because it requires a smaller group. But all of our ranger-led programs are great, and they're family friendly. They're meant for kids and adults. And one of the other things you should always look at as a parent is we have hikes specifically for kids. And those are our junior ranger hikes, and those are all fantastic.
Fantastic stuff. Let's go ahead and wind up by giving people a website where they can find out more about visiting Grand Teton National Park.
It's nps.gov, and then you just search Grand Teton. All of our national parks are under the same website.
nps.gov, that's the website that's going to take you to all of our nation's great national parks. And then just type in Grand Teton in the search engine. You'll get to this park in a hurry. Okay, anything else people ought to know before we go?
2016 is 100 years in the national park. We are in the Find Your Park campaign. Get out and find your park. Look it up online. You can see all of the different fabulous parks we have in our national park system. Over 410.
There you go, folks. Make it a point to visit as many as you can next year for the centennial celebration. The website again, nps.gov. Lucy, thanks so much for a wonderful day here at Grand Teton National Park and for sharing it with our listeners on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
I've enjoyed it. I hope everybody gets to come out.
Leupold has been building optics in Oregon since 1907, and Leupold binoculars bring excellent optical performance and modern styling to the serious outdoorsman. Whether you're a boater, birder, backpacker, or hunter, Leupold's state-of-the-art binocular lines are sure to fit your needs. Visit Leupold.com or your local Cabela's, Bi-Mart, or Sportsman's Warehouse to see the full line of Leupold optics.
Need a lightweight camp stove for your next adventure? The new Striker Series stove from Camp Chef is the perfect solution. 2 models of this single-burner stove let you cook using propane or isobutane. The heat ring technology built into the stove's cookware lets you boil water in less than 2 minutes. And like everything else in the Camp Chef line, the Striker Series stove is built tough. If you hike, paddle, hunt, or fish and cook while you do it, you're going to love the Striker Series stove. Find it at your local sporting goods store or at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, a nationwide group working to keep public lands in public hands so future generations can enjoy what we enjoy. Join the group that makes a difference. Check us out at backcountryhunters.org.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. This portion of the broadcast is brought to you by Mardon Resort at Eastern Washington's Potholes Reservoir. That is where the Lake Poker Run and Beach Party is going to be taking place August 29th. It's one of the largest and most popular family events that takes place at this resort. It kicks off at 11 a.m. with a boat poker run out to the various islands where you enjoy some games, and then that's going to be followed by tacos for dinner at 6 p.m. at the beach, and then a party on the beach with a music DJ after that. Come with a boat for the poker run, or just come for the party in the evening. Either way, you are going to have fun. Find out more at mardonresort.com. That's mardonresort.com, where the fish bite, but we don't. We've got some good news for you out of Idaho, where the backcountry hunters and anglers and Rich Landers with the Spokesman Review report President Barack Obama has signed a bill into law creating a new 275,000-acre wilderness area in the Boulder White Clouds region of the Gem State. The legislation actually creates 3 new wilderness areas in the rugged Boulder and White Cloud Mountains. They are the 138-square-mile Hemingway Boulders Wilderness, the 142-square-mile White Clouds Wilderness, and the 183-square-mile Jim McClure Jerry Peak Wilderness. The legislation was championed by Idaho Representative Mike Simpson and Senator James Risch and passed both houses with overwhelming support. According to the backcountry hunters and anglers, the new wilderness areas protect and preserve big game habitat, waters for trout, and access for hikers. Heading back to the road, we've been talking about ways to enjoy Grand Teton National Park in western Wyoming during this broadcast, and one unique way to do this is to go on a guided rafting trip on the Snake River, which runs through the park. I got to do just that with a couple of great guides working for the Grand Teton Lodge Company, and while I was not able to interview them on the air, I can tell you it was a wonderful experience. First of all, the rafting trip was not your typical one. Nope, this wasn't a raft where you had to paddle along and surf the white water or even take in the events with an oarsman at the helm. Instead, this is a scenic rafting trip down the upper Snake River, and it's done on a sweep raft where you have one guide in the bow and one guy in the stern steering the raft, much like Huck Finn steered his raft along the Mississippi River in the 1800s. During this trip, we took in some beautiful views from the river bottom, and we got to see a lot of wildlife along the way. In our case, we got to see an osprey dive into the water, take out a big trout, saw a juvenile eagle fly mere yards away from us, a couple of antelope grazing along the shoreline, and a family of otters playing and fishing alongside us as we floated downstream. Throw in the extensive local knowledge the guides have of this unique place and tie it all in with a beautiful summer day to be on the water, and you've got a recipe for some memories that will last a lifetime. Better still, lunch was included, and the price for a trip like this won't break the bank at all. You can find out more about rafting with the Grand Teton Lodge Company by going to their website at gtlc.com. Next on Northwestern Outdoors Radio, we're continuing to broadcast from Grand Teton National Park, and we just had a great experience hiking to Hidden Falls off of Jenny Lake. With us here to tell us more about some fun things you can do here in the park near Jenny Lake is Park Ranger Andrew Langford. Andrew, thanks for taking the time.
Sure, no problem. Jenny Lake is an incredible place to be. Scenery is absolutely gorgeous. This is one of the most popular places within Grand Teton National Park. And you'd mentioned that you took the boat across Jenny Lake. That's one of the more popular things to do. People come here for hiking generally. The hiking is unsurpassed, I think, almost anywhere, really in the world. It's just an incredible place. But people come here for other reasons. This is a very historic place. It was the very first area within the park that was developed for visitors. The boat going across Jenny Lake dates from the 1920s. The visitor center is in the historic Crandall studio. Harrison Crandall built that building again in the 20s, not in its current location. It's been moved 3 times. People come here to start climbs. The Jenny Lake Ranger Station is really the headquarters for people getting information on climbs. And then also they are able to obtain backcountry permits and start a backcountry trip from here or from other places. Fishing is popular. Wildlife watching is popular. We often, and people have a hard time believing sometimes that wildlife is right in this immediate area. I think that you told me earlier that you'd seen a black bear over by Hidden Falls. There was also a black bear in the campground here at Jenny Lake earlier today.
Oh, wow. And you know, that's amazing to me, Andrew, because you're right. This is a really, really busy place. It's not like Yellowstone, folks. And that's the great thing about this national park is you don't have the crowd you have at Yellowstone, but this is probably the most crowded place at the park, and that trail to Hidden Falls is probably the most crowded trail. It's only half a mile there. You get a great payoff with the beautiful waterfall there. Half mile back, hop on the boat. It's a shuttle boat, and you know, within 10-15 minutes you're back here at the Jenny Lake complex where the visitor center and the lodge and the store and all that stuff. But you're right, we did get to see a brown colored black bear. We saw a deer, you know, again, troves of us up and down the trail, and here's a deer just feeding feet away. And I guess I want to bring up something about that. There are some people that are a little bit too chummy with animals, and I know up north in Yellowstone they've already had 5 people gored this summer by bison, most of them trying to take selfies. And even today, you know, there's a bear up there in the rocks, and here's some kid climbing the rocks trying to get closer to the bear. I couldn't believe it.
Yes, it's something we do not advise at all. By regulations, people need to stay 25 yards from all of the smaller animals or 100 yards from bears and wolves. And it's for good reason. These animals are dangerous or can be dangerous, but also it really disturbs the animals. The animals that we have here are used to people. They see people all the time, and they cannot afford to change their behavior, stop feeding, do that kind of thing when they see people. So they, for the most part, simply ignore people. And we do see bears coming right in front of the Jenny Lake Visitor Center where there's lots of people middle of the day. We have moose, we have elk. There's a large bull elk that's been in this area all summer long. And so it's a wonderful place to view wildlife, but we would like people to view wildlife safely.
Well said. One other thing I want to touch on before we go here is the fishing. Jenny Lake is just a gorgeous lake, and you've got this gorgeous backdrop of the Tetons as well that's towering over the clear waters of the lake. But I understand that you've got brook trout in here, you've got cutthroat trout in here, and some really, really big lake trout.
That's correct. It is a hard lake to fish, though. A lot of places around the lake, the shore access is very difficult. You have trees going all the way down. And so the fishermen that fish for those very large fish, they're typically in boats, and it's usually a lot of guys that are locals that really know the lake that are catching those big ones.
Fair enough. But just to let you know, folks, you might be a lucky one too. And how big do they get? 38 pounds is the current big one that's been pulled out of Jenny Lake. So whether you're here to fish, whether you're here to enjoy a boat ride, whether it's just a shuttle to go hiking or a scenic boat ride around the lake, or just watch some wildlife and go for some incredible hikes, or maybe go for a climb in this rocky mountain area, Jenny Lake's a good place for you. And there's places to stay here too right around Jenny Lake.
That's correct. We have a campground. Campground's been in this area since, I believe, the 20s, and it's a favorite for a lot of folks. It is a very small campground, though, and so if you want to be camping in Jenny Lake, you want to arrive early. And I would suggest for anything you do at Jenny Lake, arrive early. You can always find a parking place when you arrive, typically before 10 o'clock, but between 10 and around 3, the parking lot is full. It is very crowded. Come after 3. Come in the evening. Evening is a great place to hike around the lake or simply view those incredible mountains.
There you go, folks. Some more great advice from Andrew Langford with the National Park Service here at Grand Teton National Park. Find out more about visiting this fantastic national park at nps.gov. That's the National Park Service website, nps.gov, and start planning your trip to this little slice of heaven in Wyoming. Andrew, thanks for telling us all about this on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thank you for coming.
At Loophole Optics, they guarantee performance. Those other optics companies, they just warranty failure. That's why every Loophole product has a lifetime guarantee. Think of it as a warranty you'll never need to cash in on. Find out more at loophole.com.
Shiloh Inn's Affordable Excellence. Welcome to Shiloh Inn's 4-star accommodations at 2-star affordable prices. I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. I personally invite you to enjoy Shiloh Inn's deluxe smoke-free suites, then relax and enjoy our spacious pools and spas with steam and sauna rooms and fully equipped fitness centers. And Shiloh's 4-star treatment is even more affordable with more free amenities than most other hotel chains, like free high-speed internet to a free continental delicious breakfast or full hot breakfast at most Shiloh Inns. Even the kids stay free. And smoke-free Shiloh Inns are all dog-friendly. That's what we mean by 4-star accommodations at 2-star affordable prices. For reservations, call 1-800-222-2244 or visit our website at shilohinns.com. Shiloh Inns, affordable excellence. American family-owned and proud of it.
It doesn't matter what sort of adventure you're after. Whether it's big game deep in the backcountry, a day of fishing out on the water, or an overnight in the great outdoors. At Sportsman's Warehouse, we've got the gear in here for what you need out there. Gear up for your next adventure at one of the Sportsman's Warehouse stores or shop online. Sportsman's Warehouse, America's premier outfitter.
We're back with one last cast from John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
It's time again for some upcoming events taking place at a Sportsman's Warehouse near you. And the big event this weekend is taking place at 1351 Waverly Drive Southeast in Albany, Oregon. That's where a brand new Sportsman's Warehouse store is having its grand opening. If you live in Western Oregon or are passing through the area, drop in and check out the latest Sportsman's Warehouse store to open in the Northwest. I'll tell you what, these stores are great. They're clean. They're well stocked. They have knowledgeable staff. Everything you could want out of a sporting goods store. That's Sportsman's Warehouse. Again, this weekend is the grand opening for a brand new one in Albany, Oregon. And now it's time for your trivia question of the week. We told you we saw a family of river otters during our trip in Grand Teton National Park, but what is the proper name for a family or group of otters? For cows, it's a herd. For many birds, it's a flock. For geese, it's a gaggle. But for otters, what is it? If you know the answer, let us know. And I'll be honest, I didn't know until our guide told us. You can give us your answer on our Facebook page at Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Just look for the post that has our weekly trivia question and give us your best guess, or you can enter through the contact page on our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. Northwesternoutdoors.com, by the way, not only has a way to enter our contest, but it has links to find out more information about our destination this week. It also has our most recent broadcast just in case you missed last week's show. Another website to check out is RenoViolaOutdoors.com. That's the home of WRVO Radio, an internet radio station that broadcasts outdoors programming 7 days a week. There's 33 shows that are on there. We are one of the shows that airs throughout the week, particularly on Wednesdays, where we actually air 4 times on Wednesdays. The website again, RenoViolaOutdoors.com. It's great outdoors programming all day long, 7 days a week. We hope you've enjoyed our travels to Grand Teton National Park in western Wyoming this week. Like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, I think this is my new favorite national park because of the drop-dead gorgeous mountain and lake vistas, first-rate wildlife viewing, rafting opportunities, kayaking and paddling opportunities, and so much more. If you're looking for a place to stay, there are several campgrounds available on a first-come, first-served basis, though you'll want to get there early on summer mornings if you hope to snag a spot. If you want to be sure about things and reserve a place, you can reserve everything from a tent or RV site to a cabin or even a room at a lakeside lodge through the Grand Teton Lodge Company. They are the main concessionaire in this park, and I've got to tell you, even if you're not staying at their crown property, the Jackson Lake Lodge, you've got to drop by and visit because the views from here and inside of here are absolutely incredible. You can find out more about all of these lodging options by going to the Grand Teton Lodge Company website at gtlc.com. That's also the place to go if you want to book a rafting trip like we did, or do some of the other activities they have to offer like fishing trips or kayak trips, and again, so much more. That's gtlc.com. In a similar vein, if you want to plan your visit to Grand Teton National Park, a great place to start is the National Park Service website. That's a simple one, nps.com, and simply search for Grand Teton from there. Wyoming is a beautiful place in the summer, but once again, we are out of time. So until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.